Okay, so we've learned about grid lines and how they work. Now we're going to learn about longitude and latitude, which are actually the grid lines for the whole globe. Okay, so imagine the whole globe has lines over it. So they're imaginary lines, but they exist in theory. Now, if you've ever used your phone to get around, what that's used is called something called GPS, Geographical Positioning System, and that uses satellites, and the satellites use these imaginary lines in order to work out where you are in the world and where you need to get to. It's pretty easy to remember. The longitude is the lines going down. So that's how I remember it. So these lines going down are called longitude. The lines going around are called latitude. So long, latitude. Okay, the equator is the latitude that sits around the middle of the Earth. So it divides the globe into two halves, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. So the equator it basically starts at 0. So this is why you can see we've got 10 degrees north, 10 degrees south. Degrees is what we use to count out these lines. So it'd be 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, all the way up to 10, and then to 20, then to 30. So that's just those marks that you can see. So the other thing is that we also have, for latitude, we have the two tropic lines. So we've got the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. The reason why these lines exist is to indicate where the tropics are in the world. So if you are above the line of the Tropic of Capricorn, between the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator, you're in a tropical area of the globe. So this top half of Australia is in the tropics. You may have heard that expression. Now this line, the longitude here, is actually 180 degrees. You can see here because I've got 170 degrees west and 170 degrees east. So from this line here, if I go that way, I'm in the eastern hemisphere, and if I go that way, I'm in the western hemisphere. So the globe is divided around the middle both ways. Now this line here is called the anti-meridian, and it just sits off the edge of New Zealand. On the opposite side of the world is something called the prime meridian, and that starts at 0, and this is why the anti-meridian is 180 degrees, because 180 degrees is a straight line, right? So it's when you've gone around that full angle. Okay, so this is maths, guys. I'm really sorry. I'm not very good at maths, but this is some maths that we need to get through. So these imaginary lines count out in degrees where we are in the world. All right, so we're going to talk about the units of value now. So we're divided here by 5 degrees. So we go 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, up to 35. Pretty standard. So I've zoomed in a little bit. I'm showing, this is a greater, more minute, sorry, losing words, example of what the lines are and how these lines get smaller and smaller and smaller. You can see here we're going up in 5, so that's a gap of 5. Start to think of this as a ruler. Now, once we start to get down into even further detail, we divide it into something called minutes. So longitude and latitude we record as degrees, minutes and seconds. And the reason we do this and we make it back to time is because they've divided it in units of 60. So between 35 and 36 is actually 60 divisions, and they are called the minutes. Okay, so think of it in a ruler. Between 0 and a centimetre is it's divided into the millimetres. Well, between 35 and 36 degrees is divided into minutes, and that's lots of 60. All right, so it's not base 10, it's base 60, for those of you who are mathematicians. Now let's go down even further. It goes into seconds. So this is 35 degrees, 18 minutes, 44 seconds. And I know this because of the way that the symbols work. So that's a degree symbol, that's the minutes, that's the seconds. This S is south, got nothing to do with the seconds. but it tells me that it's south. All right. So again, each minute is divided even further by seconds. And this is why GPS works. So this is why your phone can tell you exactly where a house is, because the detail gets quite fine. And that's because it's divided up into these degrees, minutes, and seconds. Now, remember how I was talking about the anti-meridian? That's at 180 degrees and it's off the coast of New Zealand. Now let's talk about the prime meridian. Okay, this is the imaginary line that exists and it runs through a place called Greenwich. It was decided in 1884 that this would be the place. It was just decided by a group of people. They had a meeting, there was a vote, and they just decided that Greenwich was the place. So it's completely random. These numbers are completely random, but now we agree that's how they are. And you can see here with the prime meridian, we've got the 0 degrees there, and then it's 1 degree west, 1 degree, 30 minutes. Okay, so that's 30 minutes, that's 1 degree west, 1 degree, 30 minutes. So this line here is running through a place called Greenwich. That's it. Can't tell you anything else. Just random. It amazes me. Our whole lives are based completely geographically on a random decision made by a bunch of people in 1884. Entertaining. All right, now, because maths exists, Google doesn't use, and a lot of apps don't use degrees, minutes and seconds. They use decimal. So what they do is they run through a conversion. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because when you're looking up the GPS coordinates of a place, then you need to understand what it is that you're looking at. So you see here where it's got a minus in front of it, that means that it's south. So if it's got a minus sign, it's south. If it had had a minus sign here, I would know that it's in the Western Hemisphere. If it's positive, it's in the Eastern Hemisphere. Okay? So these numbers, when they've got minus signs in front of them, tell you something slightly different. So because it's a decimal, they can't use north or south, so they use minus or positive. Minus is south, positive is north, positive is east, minus is west. Okay? So just try and remember that. Now this is the formula. I'm not asking you to actually remember this formula. It's okay. I just want to tell you how it happens. And it does this because it's mathematically, for those of you who are into maths, there's 60 minutes, but then there's 3,600 seconds. So that's the formula there, and that's how it's all worked out. I translated this decimal to these DMS, degrees, minutes, seconds, using an app on the computer, but you can also do it using this formula. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of. So when you're looking at coordinates and they're like that, it actually kind of means that. I hope that's been helpful.